This is Come to Daddy with Reuben K, the podcast for people who think the 7 stages of grief are 5 fingers and 2 bottles of Prosecco. I'm not saying I've got mummy issues, but in the womb I went on hunger strike to protest my treatment. It's me, Reuben K, and I am here at the Melbourne International Comedy Festival, which is an international comedy festival in one of the farthest places to fly to. It's so convenient for everyone. But sadly, it means that my no longer conjoined twin, my left hand, my pinky finger, the brilliant Amanda Sangorski, isn't here because she's in London, I don't know, chest feeding some pugs, I assume. How does that feel with you, Amanda? How are you doing?
Hello. Yes, it's me, Amanda, Reuben's long-suffering producer. At home in London, able to enjoy his antics. I've got a poster of Adamant behind me. Able to enjoy his Australian antics from a distance. So my job is a comedy business warm-up, if there is such a thing. I do warm-up for the main event, and it's usually about podcast business, which essentially is a bit of a cool down. So please like and subscribe to us on the YouTube, Come to Daddy podcast, and enjoy your audio recording if that's how you are consuming this. And exciting guest this week who I'm a big fan of, but no spoilers. I shall hand back to Reuben, and I better go because those dogs are not going to feed themselves.
So let's get into it. My guest today is an anomaly, a musical comedian who's actually made it. Because as we know, when music meets comedy, it is the death of entertainment. Please welcome David O Doherty. One question, Doherty or Doherty?
Don't mind. There's 4 dialects of Irish. So my cousins in Donegal would say O Doherty, like that. But my cousins in Belfast would say O Doherty. So they're all equally right and wrong simultaneously, Reuben. Don't sweat it. Irish people love nothing more than an American doing a bad Irish accent. So occasionally a movie will appear on Netflix. There's one at the moment called Irish Wish. There was one recently called Jamie Dornan was in it. It appeared during the pandemic when no one had anything else to do. So the entire nation had a group watch of it. It was called Wild Mountain Time. And in it, Jamie Dornan's already Irish accent was insufficiently Irish. So the American producers had to sort of got him to do this accent that I don't know what it is, but it's what's called an Irish accent, I think.
On Come to Daddy, it's a podcast where I like to talk to comedians about their family life, their parents, and see how that's influenced their comedy. Can you talk us through just like what your bedroom at home as a child would have looked like?
Oh my goodness. There's a lot of stuff going on, Reuben. There is bicycle. I always had my bicycle in my bedroom. As soon as my brother moved to the spare room when he was about 13 or 14, he was replaced by bicycles. Then always had a hut going on, like a little, like a safe place.
Like a homemade yurt.
Yes. Yeah, and now is probably a thing you would buy in Pottery Barn or IKEA. Then you would have to just make out of cushions.
Yeah.
And I also...
A child bomb shelter.
I ran a detective agency from a very early age.
I'm thoroughly unsurprised.
Yeah.
What was the name of the detective agency?
We were called Ground Raiders. And so
What was your caseload like?
Well, this was the issue. This is exactly the issue. At one point, we weren't getting any cases.
Who's we?
Tiernan, Mark, and me. We were modeled closely on a series of children's books called The Three Investigators, which were popular when I was 8 or 9 or 10. And so we had business cards printed with our home phone numbers on them. And I was very much the engine of these stupid ideas. So I posted business cards with my parents' home phone number into every house on the street. And it just said, it said Ground Raiders, David, Tiernan, Mark, with our home phone numbers, and under it just said, we handle everything. Like zero context that we were even a detective agency.
And how many calls did you get? And how many of them were after midnight?
So we weren't getting any cases. We went to the police station at one point to
See if they
ask
had
them
any runoff.
if they had any spare mysteries, I guess. And like this would have been an era in the culture of my small island nation where the church scandals would have been starting to break.
So actually, they would have had a lot of
They
mysteries.
could have used us
They
as
used
a
a honey
trap.
pot.
The whole thing came to an end when, with no mysteries to solve, we went down to the supermarket and found the lost cats section of the notice board.
No, that's
And
right.
So I had to phone up, like, Mrs. O'Shea and be like, "Hello, Mrs. O'Shea, did you lose a cat?" And I remember her voice being like, "Oh, yes, I did." And me saying, "You're in luck because me and 2 other 10-year-olds have set up a detective agency and we're going to find your
The
cat."
ground raiders are on the case, Mrs. O'Shea.
And Mrs. O'Shea said, "Can I speak to your mother?" And the corporation was dissolved soon after that. Mum was just like, "Stop doing this." Yeah, that's my childhood bedroom and my childhood.
Hey, let me get to know your begetters a bit better. First names of your parents?
Jim, Anne,
Lovely. Whereabouts in this world are they located?
they're in Dublin. They're still around, 85 and 86.
Will they listen to this?
No, I think it might be slightly beyond there. Like if I say to Dad, "You'd love this podcast," I send him one episode of it, and he thinks that's the
thing.
That's the whole thing. Then yeah, so I'll send him a cool history one or something like that, and he's like, "Oh yeah, he's the guy who talks about the lockout strike of 1913." He talks about everything, Dad, but that's the one.
That's the one
heard.
you've seen.
So depending on the topics that we get to, as to whether I will send it to them, but I don't think they'll find it.
That's fair.
Is
Not
that
a lot
fair?
of people find it. Even I have trouble finding this podcast.
I did a funny song at the gala at the start of the Melbourne Comedy Festival about how bad they are with technology. But the irony of that was that they couldn't listen to the song then, so I had to play it down the phone to them. So,
How do they take it?
yeah, fine.
Do they like it
fine.
when they're in the material?
I don't know if they like it, but they don't get a choice,
No.
firstly. And secondly, yeah, they do enjoy it. Like they'll come to a gig in Dublin and I'll make a big deal out of the fact from the stage that they're here and the gig is kind of 20% different. Not necessarily in a knocking the edges off things way.
No, it's the audience going, "Oh my God," and they're in the room tonight.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I'll be like, also they're the only 85 and 86-year-old in the room, so they're getting handed scotches left, right, and center by the other people in the audience. But I'll sort of, it just changes the balance of my comedy slightly because I do just talk about my own life in too much detail. So I'll be like, "Isn't that true, Mum?" And she'll be like, "Yes, it is."
Yes, and I wish you wouldn't say it in a room full of people. The lineage you come from is super fascinating and incredibly high achieving. I've got like a tiny rundown here, but please elaborate if you can. Grandfather, hurdles champion? Grandfather, hurdles champion. I had 5 times to say that correctly. Great-grandfather, political heavyweight who helped establish an independent Irish state.
Yeah, and great grandmother too. Yeah, she was head of the women's movement.
And then your grandfather's brother, Ireland's last exorcist.
Yes.
And then you.
Yeah.
That wasn't meant to sound anything.
It doesn't bode well for my offspring if it keeps going on this
It's
trajectory.
a real downward scale.
What does
isn't
that
it?
leave? Professional yo-yo artist. The Exorcist one
Failed Rubik's Cube solver.
is the most exciting. He was like, it's a very weird era that all this was happening in because it was old school, super Catholic Ireland.
Mm.
Like, in a way, I've grown up during this really interesting shifting sands era of a country where, when I was born in late 1975, it was the most Catholic place in the world. Pope came in 78, and half of the Irish population stood in the same field to listen to him talk. Pope came back in 2019, and it was in a room above a pub kind of thing. You know what I mean? As in, like,
Really?
yeah, there were 8,000 people, I think, came, and they were all just really, really old. In the context of that, yeah, Uncle Fehan was my grandfather's brother, and he was head of psychology at the big university in Dublin, University College Dublin, and he was simultaneously an exorcist. Yeah, he was a priest who was head of psychology. So, I mean, if you talk to
Isn't that
people,
a conflict of interest?
not really, because I think, you know, what is exorcism except just people having what we'd call breakdowns now?
Yeah.
So he was just using contemporary psychology a lot of the time.
But through a religious motivation, or like doing the whole "it's a demon in you" as opposed to this is a trauma or this is a psychological phenomena.
I mean, I don't know if he really believed in God. I don't know. You know, it's such a weird era where it was just an unquestioned
I
thing.
can't imagine what it must be like in a country that is so has built all of its foundations around religion
Yeah.
to be in now a changing world where religion is now being, less and less relevant as we
Yeah,
keep
I mean,
moving
it
on.
flicked off like a light switch, though, Reuben. As in, I remember when I went to school first. So my mother's Protestant and my father's Catholic, which was really rare. Like, it's so funny that was, there were people who wouldn't be allowed to play with. It was called a mixed marriage, and children wouldn't be allowed round to the house to play. Lest I don't know what.
As you believe in the wrong kind of imaginary friend.
Yeah, yeah. And what was remarkable was how quickly, when the scandal started to break, everyone just went, nah, I never really believed in any of that. Like, so my relationship with that was that the teacher or the headmaster would be like, and you will be eating fish this Friday or whatever, to mum or dad, who'd be like, absolutely, father. And then we get in the car and mum would be like, eye rolling. So I kind of realized this was all bullshit.
Yeah.
And then what you learned over the course of your adolescence was, oh, this was bullshit, and everyone else was also eye rolling at it as well.
Yeah.
It's why it was interesting to grow up in what was quite a fundamentalist religious place, and then one day the whole thing just collapsed, and everyone be like, oh no, I didn't really believe that.
No, we never did.
Yeah, it's why I have hope for any other fundamentalist place, that everyone is, to an extent, just keeping up appearances, maybe.
Hey, your dad is quite a well-respected jazz musician.
Yeah.
In Ireland.
Yeah, hugely, yeah.
Hugely. So when you started doing music in your comedy, or which came first, comedy and then adding music into it, or being involved in music and then adding comedy on top of it?
Well, like, what my dad does is so much more punk than anything anyone I know has done, in that he got into jazz in the 50s when there was a thing in Ireland called the War Against Jazz, which was they wanted people to play traditional Irish music. So dad would have gigs where they would play trad till the priest had left.
Right.
And then suddenly they would play like dance. It was
like a full underground scene.
Yeah, it was. And it was kind of this fear of black music, but it was also in the context of Ireland, where the country managed to be scared of Protestants as well. It was just scared of anything that wasn't exactly us, I think. But somehow dad heard Charlie Parker in 1955 and was like, oh yeah, I want to dedicate my entire life to this.
How did he hear it and in such a closed society, and B, then how did he practice it and become good at it?
Yeah, I think there is something in the children and the grandchildren of the revolutionaries. So like, what happened in Ireland when we had our revolution, 1916, and then 1918 to 21, the War of Independence, was that wasn't necessarily a Catholic revolution. It's just, as happens in so many societies, like, the revolutionaries were idealistic. Some of them were socialist. Some of them were very religious. Others were sort of colonial in outlook. But in the vacuum that took place after the revolution, the church just rushed in. I think this happens a lot, where your revolutionaries are like, we're done. We're absolutely done now. someone take over the boring admin.
And the church will always come in.
Yeah, they shot in like a rat up a drain pipe. And so Ireland became super Catholic Ireland, but there was a subversion, I think. The subversive thing that makes you a revolutionary in the first place was definitely in my family, in as much as, my dad's family, Auntie Gay was a jewelry maker in Germany. They traveled out around the world. They didn't have this sort of close-minded Catholic type thing. And I think some of that filtered down to me, and it's definitely like jazz is in that era a really subversive music, because you're taking all these show tunes and you're just turning them inside out for the benefit of about 6 people upstairs in a pub and smoking weed and doing all of these.
And it's a subliminal form of revolution, isn't it? Because it's sort of, the statement is, oh, here's something you know and love that's very straight down the barrel, and we're going to turn it completely on its head. It just opens up to people's ideas. Oh, anything is possible. If it can be done with a song, it can be done with a system.
Yeah, and the irony of Catholic Ireland is that it also had some of the most subversive writers. Like at the time when Ireland was becoming super Catholic Ireland, James Joyce was granted had to leave the country, he felt, because his work was getting banned. But he's writing like Finnegan's Wake, these books that have never been surpassed in terms of modernism and weirdness and subversion. And so that's the era of writers that I love. I don't want to jump ahead in your format,
Not at
Reuben,
all.
but my relationship with my parents had a massive reset in Pando 1 to get out. They'd be pretty vulnerable in that they have pretty much every underlying condition. Having, the life of the jazz musician isn't necessarily that
Long.
healthy, certainly. I mean, somehow he has lasted this long with mum as his full-time carer. So my mum played tennis and hockey for Ireland in the 60s. And so she's arthritic down that side, both of those sports relying heavily on one side. So sort of shoulder, hip, knee, ankle. And so they both need a little, it certainly wouldn't have been great for them to get, especially that original brand of COVID. So we moved to my late grandmother's cottage on an Atlantic island, as kind of as far west as you can go. And the plan was to go there for 2 weeks, and we were there for 5 months. And so in that time, this huge thing happened where a lot of people never get past the adolescent eye-rolly thing they get with their folks. But I effectively moved back in with them 20 years after I'd moved out, and they just got to see them as 2 weird housemates, really. And yeah, it changed everything, really. Yeah. So my mum, she won't mind me saying, has macular degeneration, so her eyesight's going slowly, which is a tough one when you combine that with arthritis from sport, because when you bump into a thing you don't see, it's sore and you don't want to fall over. You used to go blind if you had macular degeneration, and now they give you these. They inject literally into your eye. I think it's just vitamin C, but it delays the symptoms.
Oh.
Judi Dench is the most famous person whose sight's going, but really slowly.
Yeah.
And it's lovely. And mum's the same thing. But I remember the first time I went. So I'm lucky in that I have my brother and my sister and my dad, and so we would all take her for these injections. And what I didn't know, my sister just said, it's a lot, this. And I was like, it's fine, it'll be fine. And then, so she comes back in from getting the injections. I didn't realize you're effectively blind for about half an hour. So you just sit in a chair with her. She couldn't see, and she'd had it a few times before, so probably wasn't thinking it was that big a deal. But I remember reaching out and holding my hands, and that was this huge moment in my mind, for me, where it changed from you brought me up, and now I'm going to take care of you. And I bawled my eyes out, but she couldn't see. So I was just, she just thought
you had hay fever.
She thought I was looking at my phone. Whatever, yeah. Looking at some sad memes. Here, Mum. Do you know what happened actually in that moment?
What?
There's a rugby player.
I'm familiar.
There's a
I know exactly which one.
So a rugby player called Shane Jennings, who played for Ireland, happened to be in this waiting room. And I'd been talking to him while Mum was in there. And he'd broken his arm playing in a match that weekend. And when she came in, he could, this is a very sensitive thing for a rugby player to do. He saw the state that I was in, and he came over and he sat beside my mum, and he said, oh, I believe you watch our matches sometimes. I'm Shane Jennings, to my mother who couldn't see. And she's like, oh, yes, I do, Shane. And he was like, and did you see the match of the weekend? I broke my arm. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. He basically, this like, he saved the day.
Oh.
Yeah, yeah. It's honestly, it's one of the most moving episodes of my life. I'm welling up thinking about it. I'm sorry.
No, not at all. You can cry. The mic's waterproof. That's how electrics work, isn't it, Nathan? Fantastic. What an amazing story as well. Just for him to go, oh, I can help here somehow.
Yeah.
That's
yeah. I think
beautiful.
maybe I had told him that she had been an athlete in her day, so maybe there was some sort of
Connection there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what
Did
it
you
is.
know, you didn't know him before this?
I it's Dublin, so everyone's got friends of friends of friends.
Gotcha.
You know, I'm sure we'd made some sort of connection, but yeah, that was and now it's fine. Now you just go in there and you do it. But moving down to this island, I remember once I found a croquet set in the shed. So I was like, right, we're playing croquet. I mowed the grass as flat as humanly possible, and get them out. You're the blue ball and I'm the red ball and the yellow ball, and my mother just destroyed us both because, like, oh yeah, no, she's
Blind and arthritic.
yeah, she's
Still
an
destroys you.
international athlete.
I like that the skills of tennis and what was the other one?
Hockey.
Hockey. Oh yeah, hockey. Of course. Why would you invite a hockey player to play a croquet match with you? That's asking for slaughter. No matter the age difference.
Here's a nice small. I feel that there's something of my family in this. Mum played with Ireland's greatest ever hockey player, who was called Maeve Kyle, who was so fast she ran in the 100 meters at the 1956 Olympics in Melbourne.
Really?
And there was a campaign. So I think it was the first woman to run in a sprint. I think there was this is old school Catholic Ireland. It was like they shouldn't.
Unladylike.
Yeah, exactly. The
It
wind
could harm their uterus.
it'll go up their foof, and they won't be able to have 16 children. And so there was a campaign in the newspapers about, okay, we'll let her go, but she must run in a full length skirt.
No.
But this kind of sums up the whole thing
Just like a foot, like ankle length.
completely. Yeah, yeah. And this I feel sums up certainly the sort of parents that I had and their friends, where Maeve Kyle was just like, yeah, absolutely, no problem. And then gets here and just gets the new tiny Adidas skirt that everyone's running. Because no one really cares once you're here. Yeah. It was more just the keeping up appearances of like, well, we must defend
Which is
the
very
woman's
Irish.
honor.
You'll all be eating fish on Friday. Yeah. But once you get to Friday.
Exactly. And what is growing old, but realizing no one really knows anything. Everyone's just spoofing. Everyone's saying yes and rolling their eyes. I feel there was something of a good upbringing in that two-facedness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about questioning the rules that you're meant to live by, right?
Yeah, that these things are hard and fast, these rules. And then you find out a lot of it's total bullshit.
All its expectations of other people, or the difference between morals, which are imprinted on you, and ethics, which are something you kind of grow up with and kind of go, oh, I think I'll sort these out. These are my individuals.
Completely, yeah. Like Dad grew up in the theatre, which was just full of gay men in Dublin, and everyone was just. I think for the time that the theatre was open, everyone could be themselves, and then everyone just went back to their like. The heads of the two big theatres in Dublin in the 50s which is the Abbey Theatre, the National Theatre, and the Gate. Micheál MacLiamore and Hilton Edwards were and they were a couple, and they were very close with the president at the time, who was the De Valera, the arch conservative Catholic, and he just thought they were great friends. I don't think he thought they were great friends. I'd say he knew, but it was all just bullshit.
They're roommates. It's the whole thing. They're roommates. They're close friends. They're companions. No, they're buggering each other senseless, and they're having a great time doing it.
So within the theatre, the couple, Liam and Edwards, were known as Sodom and Begorra.
No,
Yeah,
that's
which
very
is
good.
a very good
That's
Irish
very
pun.
good. That's fantastic work. Do you ever find parts or characteristics of your parents come through in your comedy, or when you're on stage?
Oh God, yes.
Which parts?
To the point where I can attribute punchlines to them.
Like you're quoting them verbatim, or just in their
No,
style?
more just in terms of vibe. Like, I'm trying to think. Like, my dad has this turn of phrase that he once said that my mother would cry at card tricks. I remember that.
That's great. That's great.
What was
All the plosives in that are gorgeous. Cry at card tricks. Just so many C's in a row.
Well, he was once talking about someone that he wouldn't really have much time for, and he said, I wouldn't even ignore him. And mine is the household where, and Mum would be rebelling against this, where it's Christmas and someone, is talking about pasta and someone else talking about Liverpool. So just Beatles pasta puns start to come. And do you know what I mean? Like, do you know ruining a family meal where it's just total silence and someone just says like Penny Lane and then just back to absolute silence. And Mum's like, can we not just talk like a normal family? So I get a sort of jokey thing from him. Dad always liked certain 50s comedians, certain like there's the sort of that Lenny Bruce era. So my granny lived on this island off the west. So it was a 6-hour drive, and Dad, it was tapes, and a lot of them were weird old comedy tapes, like shows, old BBC shows that are kind of forgotten, like Round the Horn,
The Goons?
The Goons. And so Dad was playing all of those things to us, and then, but from Mum, it was more really funny anecdotes. Like she would find it really funny that this thing had happened, and then they were almost like non-punchlines. Like I recently was running to put my the letter into the post box to make a 5 p.m. postage collection, and I put my keys in, and Mum thought, that's the funniest thing. That is the funniest thing you have ever done, David.
We have one last thing for you. It's the Pick and Mix, where you get to dip your hand into the sweetie jar of childhood experience and pick a selection of potentially tongue-numbing tales to share with us. Pick and mix, pick and mix. It's time for us to do Pick and Mix.
Daddy, look! I'm doing a dive.
Ways you've tried over the years to get your parents' attention.
I definitely have some entrepreneurial thing in me. Now, I don't know if it was just to try and subvert the loserdom that I saw my family as. All these, like, I hated jazz, you know what I mean? I thought the music was a giant practical joke. So I think some part of me, age 10 or 11, was like, I'm going to get... So my sister was a punk who was like living in London, working in children's homes. You know what I mean? My brother was being a jazz musician on the freaking metro in Paris, busking. So I'd be like, only I can save this. So I decided I was going to be a great entrepreneur. And so we're talking about car washing.
Right.
We're talking about wholesale planting of vegetables and then trying to sell them door to door.
A door-to-door vegetable salesman.
Yeah.
Feels like, when you say it like that, you understand how absurd that is. Like a door-to-door vegetable sale, like with a wheelbarrow?
Yeah, well,
A briefcase with samples.
The thing is, you do actually, when you're 10 or 11 and you arrive with a plastic bag full of dirty carrots, you make some serious coin because everyone's like, what is the hell
What is going
this?
on?
Yeah, what has happened to this boy that he is traveling around? But we love it. Yeah, so I
Did you do
unfortunately,
it barefoot just to add sympathy? Holes in your jeans. Hello, excuse me. Would you like some carrots, please? Please buy them.
I also I remember making my mother buy the seeds. So as a business and my car cleaning enterprise as well, I would just use all of their products.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, like washing up liquid, sponges, towels.
Did you have a name for the industry?
Tried. Well, it was an offshoot of Ground Raiders, the detective agency. When we weren't getting the cases, we definitely moved
You
into
moved into root vegetables.
It's the episode of Columbo they never talk about where he's got no mysteries this week, so he just goes door to door with some turnips. So it was definitely an attempt to right the wrongs of the family by becoming kind of a Richard Branson type figure.
A self-made man.
Yeah, and there was a period where I remember like borrow some money off David, because we didn't, although it was this quite bohemian existence, there isn't a lot of money in jazz, Reuben. I don't know if you know this.
No, that can't be true.
Dad had side hustle where he would write the music for ads. Dad played the
Jingles are lucrative.
Yeah, but then a lot of movies, the orchestras, which was real cheap in Dublin. So Dad plays on Somewhere Out There, If Love Can See You, An American Tale.
Yes.
Like all the orchestrations and that.
Fievel Goes West, American Tale, the greatest retelling of the Jewish diaspora through mice. There are no cats in America, 'cause the streets are paved with cheese. What an amazing lyric. Your dad played on that?
No, yeah, he played on the more syrupy orchestral parts of that. My dad wrote the song.
I've got a whole new respect for you.
Any of your Irish listeners right now will have one of my dad's songs burned into their brains. He wrote the song you have to learn in primary school about how to cross the road.
No, what
yeah,
is
the safe cross code. Yeah. I mean, it's got 6 steps to it. It's the one time I feel when dad's jazziness, like, there's no sax solos in it, let's just say, but it's too long. It's too long, Dad.
There's some modulations. He's playing with the chromatic scale. That's very funny.
Yeah. He did that. He worked with puppets on that, and so I definitely thought I will be the one. I'll become this great businessman, effectively. Sort of button down Ralph Lauren shirt vibe.
Mm-hmm. The dream of every 10-year-old.
So
I'm going to be a tycoon, mama.
There used to be a thing, and in fact, it's still there. They definitely thought I had this weird gift because the Panini Soccer Stickers album is a thing that still exists, which is...
You're going to have to break that down.
There's a sticker of every player in the Premiership.
Mm-hmm.
It used to be called the First Division. And a little fact file about them. And the idea is every time you have pocket money, you would buy more stickers.
Yeah.
And they go in the album. I learned off the height, weight, goals, international appearances, international goals, and league appearances of like 300 men, all of these players.
I've done the same.
To the point where if they were having people over for dinner, they'd be like, David, get down here, bring the book, and Dad would open it and be like, Brian Robson, and I would be like, 5'10", born in Worksop, 57 England appearances, and I think they thought this is gonna have real world application. Whatever this gift
they thought they had a
is.
child genius. They're like, it's the Mozart of soccer.
Statistics, stickers. Little
did they not think neurodivergence? They never thought, he's really good at memorizing this one thing. He's hyper-focused. It's all about numbers. They never thought, maybe just get him to see a specialist. No, we'll monetize it. Showbiz parents.
Little did they realize that the only real-world application of that is in memorizing stupid comedy songs and routines.
But it's doing real well for you.
It has. It's going all right, but Yeah, I never my business career. I have a bit of hustle to me, in that like I'll record an album and I'll put it
Yeah.
out myself and do all of that. But it's still I haven't gone door to door with my carrots in recent years.
Hey, we've got one last little jump for you on this steeplechase.
I've loved it.
It's called Shall I Be Mother?
Shall I be mother?
And it's where you get to look into my eyes and imagine that I am your father, your mother, or a weird non-binary mashup Frankenstein of the two.
Wow.
And speak from the heart. What would you say to them?
I would say to them, they're 85 and 86 now. You're 85 and 86. You're 2 and 1. I'm effectively talking to here. It's amazing that you've made it this far. Can you please stop being stressed that the neighbor's car is slightly parked? Just treat every day like a part. Open a bottle of Pinot Grigio first thing in the morning. Play those Charlie Parker records you still love as loud as you want. Scream from the roof. Holy shit, we're still here. Isn't this hilarious? Rather than be like, oh, that tree, when the leaves grow, I think it might be a bit dark through the sitting room. Just you're here. You're amazing. For as long as this show stays on the road, let's just keep having a laugh.
Ah, that's beautiful. Hey, David O'Doherty, thank you for coming to Daddy. Where can my listeners find you, see you, find more of you?
I will be touring Australia for the next while, and then I'll do the Edinburgh Fringe in August, and then I'll do an Irish tour. I'm planning some things. I'm planning a weird film that I'm trying to shoot at the moment, and yeah, they will find me in unexpected places. The airing cupboard. Look down, bottom left. I'm in there.
And as usual, dear listeners, you can find me on the internet or in the gutter. Thank you for coming to Daddy, David O'Doherty.
Thanks, Ruby, baby.